Okay, Robert Breaker, missionary evangelist to the Spanish-speaking people, and I want to make this video about the 1865 Spanish Bible and show some critical text readings in that version. My last video that I made recently, I give some information from the American Bible Society's historical essay in which it talks about the 1865 and the critical accuracy that was used in that translation. And I've recently talked to those behind the 1865, and they say, well, you're crazy to think that critical accuracy means that they inserted critical text readings. Well, they may or may not have inserted critical text readings. That's not important. What's important is whether or not there are critical text readings in that version. And the facts prove that, yes, there are. There are critical text readings in the 1865 Spanish Bible. That's right, it doesn't read completely with the King James Bible. And I could say that all day, but I'm going to actually show you some places in which the 1865 Spanish Bible reads with the critical text. Now, almost every one of these places, the original 1602 reads with the critical text as well. How can you have critical text in 1602? Well, I've always said this, and a lot of people don't want to hear it, but it's true. The Catholic Latin Vulgate is the critical text. Now, that's just plain and simple and to the point. Reina, who put out the Reina Valera Bible, said that the Latin Vulgate, although it might be old, is full of errors and mistakes. He said that the official Catholic Bible of the Roman Catholic Church, the Latin Vulgate, is full of errors and mistakes. So we get the Catholic text and we realize they're bad. They have errors. Well, where do the critical texts come from? The critical texts come from Vaticanus Sinaiticus. They come from old Catholic translations. And the Catholics messed with the Word of God and gave us Catholic and critical texts that are full of errors. The pure Word of God comes from the pure text, which is from Antioch. And I believe it's Acts 11:26 or 28, where it says Christians were first called, the disciples of Jesus were first called Christians in Antioch. You follow the Antiochian or the Byzantine line, you get the text underlining the King James Bible. Other text line is from Alexandria, Egypt, up into Rome. And that text line is corrupt. The Textus Receptus is the Byzantine text, which is the right text. So basically, as quickly as I can, I'm going to show you some places in the 1865 Spanish Bible that reads with the critical text. It reads against the King James Bible. I cannot understand how these people that push the 1865 Spanish Bible can be behind a version that has critical text, that reads with Catholic Vulgate, critical Catholic text. They claim to be King James and only because they believe King James came from the right text, and they're against the critical text like the ASV, the RSV, and the NIV. Any version other than the King James Bible, they're against it for the critical text. How could they then defend the 1865 when it too reads with critical text? So first I want to show you Matthew 24 and verse 2. All right, this is the one of the first editions of the 1865. In Matthew 24 and verse 2, you can pause it and look at that. Notice the third word is El. That means him. Well, here's the 1865 in which they've made 50 changes. And some of those changes they made for the better, against the Catholic critical text. And in this version, because it has the King James next to it, in Matthew 24 and verse 2, see how they changed it to Jesus? Why did they do that? Because the King James says Jesus. So what they did is in this version of the 1865 in which they made 50 changes, they changed the 1865 to read closer to the King James Bible and to go against the critical text. Now if that's not a confession that the 1865 has critical text, I don't know what is. Now they've since repented of making 50 changes in the 1865 Spanish Bible. And they went back to printing it exactly the way it was. And so that means they are against the King James Bible, and they are in favor of the Latin Vulgate and the critical text in the 1865 Spanish Bible by removing the word Jesus. There's a critical text reading in the 1865 Spanish Bible. You say, well, how did that happen? Did they insert that in 1865? That came from 1602 from the Latin Vulgate. And the critical text make the same change. So that matches the critical text. It's a critical text reading in the 1865 Spanish Bible. Let's look at Luke chapter 9 and verse 43. I hope you understand what I'm trying to get across here. I had a man who was King James only in English tell me one time, and I'm turning to the pages, he said, any Bible that has a critical text reading, one is too many. Now, our King James Bible, we thank God for the King James Bible. You say, well, the King James Bible doesn't read with the critical text. Nope. The King James Bible is God's preserved, inerrant, infallible, inspired Word of God for us today in English. And I thank God for the King James Bible. In Spanish, in French, in any other language, if you want a pure Bible, it should line up with the King James Bible. So if you can find a version that doesn't match the King James Bible and reads instead with the Catholic critical text, how could you use that version? I don't understand. Luke 9:43, and we read right here, we're looking for the word Jesus. And in Luke 9:43, the word Jesus is removed. And here it is in the old 1865, verse 43. And you can see the verse there. Now, here's Luke 9:43. In the updated 1865, the one in which they changed and they repented of changing, Luke 9:43, and it says here, see where it says Jesus did. King James, Jesus. Okay? Now, they changed this. They changed it to be closer to the King James and to read against the critical text. They repented of changing it. Now they believe that this is right, where it takes out Jesus. Well, the Aleph and the B, which is Vaticanus and Sinaiticus, and the Vulgate take out the word Jesus. So does the original 1865, which they defend today. So that's a place in the 1865 Spanish Bible that reads with a critical text. John 14:28. Another version. I'm just trying to show you places that the 1865 Spanish Bible reads with the critical text. Should we follow the critical text? Should we follow the right text? Should we follow the King James? I'm King James only. All of these places that I'm showing you, the 1602 Purified has correct. The 1602 Purified, the original 1602 Spanish Bible, in which these mistakes were also found that I'm showing you, because they followed the corrupt Latin Vulgate text. So which is correct, the original 1602 and the 1865, or the King James and the 1602 Purified? It's the King James and the 1602 Purified. These critical texts have been removed in the KJV and 1602 Purified. John 14:28. And it says here, in this verse, we are looking for my Father. And you don't see in John 16:28 where it says my Father, mi Padre. It says al Padre or el Padre. All right, here it is in the updated 1865, and here's a place where they didn't change it. Look where it says in the underlined part, the Father. In the King James it says my Father. Now, this is just one word that's been changed from my to thee. But it's a doctrinal error to say Jesus to say the Father. That's not right. It's his Father. Why would you change the fact that Jesus was the Son of God and he was saying, my Father? Well, because the Latin Vulgate changes that. So does Vaticanus and Sinaiticus. So the 1865 reads against the King James Bible in this verse containing a critical Catholic text. Acts 16:10. I mean, I could go on all day with all these different places. The people behind the 1865 say you have to defend the 1865, make every attempt to defend the 1865 Spanish Bible because that is the right text. They call it the outstanding representative of the Valera Bible. But the truth of the matter is the 1865 reads with the Latin Vulgate, the corrupt Latin Vulgate, and the critical text time and time again. Acts 16:10. And we're looking for the word God. All right, that word should be Lord. Acts 16:10, and you see the underlined word there is Dios. The critical texts say Dios or God. Here's the other 1865 in which they changed it, and we're looking at Acts 16:10. And I hope you understand what I'm trying to show you here, that the 1865 has critical text. It's been changed in some places in a modern updated version to go against it. Now look what the King James Bible says there in verse 10. Lord. Lord in Spanish is Señor. Why doesn't the 1865 say Señor? Because it's following the Vaticanus, the LXX, it's following the um, Sinaiticus and the Vulgate. This is a place they didn't change when they updated the 1865 with 50 changes. And it's wrong. The 1865 reads wrong in Acts 16:10 by changing Lord or Señor to Dios. Let's look at Acts 17:27. It's right there, same area, same thing. The King James Bible says Lord. And the 1865 says God. Which one is it? Is it the Lord or is it God? Is it God or the Lord? The 1865 does that a lot. It changes Lord to God or God to Lord, vice versa. Many times. Here it is. The new 1865, in which they supposedly made changes, they left that word. The Lord. It should say Señor, but it says God. Lord has been changed to God in the corrupt 1865 Spanish Bible. They claim it's close as you can get to the King James Bible. Why didn't they correct that passage? Why didn't they correct what I'm showing you to read with the King James, to read with the Textus Receptus? Why did they go against the King James and Textus Receptus in the 1865 Spanish Bible? Acts 22:16. Acts 22:16 takes out the word, it should say El nombre del Señor, the name of the Lord. But the 1865 says his name, su nombre. And here it is, verse 16. Why did they take out the fact that it was the name of the Lord? Why did they do that? Okay, here's the one that Jeff McArdle has says he's repented of changing, but that has changed. Acts 22 and verse 16. And here we read Acts 22:16, because this has the King James next to it. I want you to see what the King James says. Here's a place where they changed it when they made the 50 changes. King James says, calling on the name of the Lord. Here it says, invocando el nombre del Señor. So in the first 1865, those behind the Valera Spanish 1865, the Valera Bible Society, saw that that verse read wrong. So in their updated 1865 with 50 changes, they made changes to that verse because they saw it was wrong to leave out the word Lord. Then they repented of those changes and went back to this that takes out the name of the Lord. And by taking out the name of the Lord, it reads against the King James Bible, and it reads with the critical text and the Latin Vulgate. The final one I want to show you, and I believe this is a mountain of evidence. And if you're watching this, please, if you're a pastor and you know you've heard that the 1865 Spanish Bible is the best, would you please look into it and study? There's a lot of different Bibles out there in Spanish that a lot of people are using. And a lot of people say, well, ours is the best, ours is the best. Well, don't just listen to what they say. Can you study the issue out for yourself? One critical text reading is too many. I want something as close to the King James Bible as possible, or at least the text that came from that King James Bible, but also that's as close to the 1602 Old Castilian Spanish as possible. And that's the 1602 Purified. Here's Jacobo, which is the book of James, and verse 1 and verse 22. James 1:22, and here's the verse here, and you can come back and pause this and read it. It's actually in two different places. It's in the bottom, and here it is up on the top. And this is the old 1865. This is the modern updated 1865. And here's, you can see in English and Spanish, in this version, they put God. It should say Lord, which is Señor. Dios means God. Señor is Lord. This follows the Latin Vulgate. They did not change this when they made 50 changes. It's a critical text reading in the 1865 Spanish Bible. I could go on and on. There's many places that the 1865 Bible reads with the critical text. Why does it read with the critical text? Because it reads with the Latin Vulgate, which even Valera said was a corrupt edition of the Bible. And I don't know about you, but I don't want a Bible that reads with critical text or corrupt text. I want a pure Bible. I thank God for in English I have a King James 1611 authorized version, and I thank God that in Spanish we have the 1602 Purified Spanish Bible, the only Spanish Bible to go back to the original 1602 and purify it by making it read with the pure text underlying the King James Bible. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it was informative, and I hope